Hello, Magnus. Hello, Rasmus. I just introduced you briefly in Serbian, and before we play one particular movie, you may want to tell something about Piratbyran and the movie itself.
That's right. We're going to show a movie in a couple of minutes that we made 1.5, almost 2 years ago. Or what was it?
1 year ago.
1 year ago. It will explain a bit of our position and things, and also the style we like to do our performances in, so to speak. But in order to understand the movie, we have to give a bit of a background on our organization and file sharing debate in Sweden and so on. So we're just going to do that for a while. You can say that our history can be divided into two phases. One is before we made this movie, and one is after it. Because the situation in Sweden has changed a whole lot since we started. We started in 2003, at a time when there was no debate on file sharing at all in the media, or no one really talked about it. But a lot of things had happened. A lot of people had broadband connections. A lot of people were file sharing a lot. And also a lot had happened in music, that a lot of new bands had come out that produced music on computers and releasing it on the internet and so on. So a lot of things had happened, but all you could see in the media was basically the anti-piracy organization claiming that file sharing was costing the music industry so and so many millions a year, and that it had to be stopped and so on. So we formed this organization to give another view of this, try to draw attention to all the issues that file sharing invokes, and all the positive things about file sharing and so on. And in the beginning, our task was very much just to get attention to this question, because there was no debate, and just get a debate starting. So we started a lot of campaigns, did demonstrations and all kinds of performances to try to get attention to this. Also, one thing we did was to start the Pirate Bay, this BitTorrent tracker, just as an experiment with this new file sharing technique that both was very effective in sharing files, and also posed a lot of interesting questions about copyright and what's legal, what's not legal, and who is actually sharing what to whom. Because in the BitTorrent tracker, it's not just you downloading from another person, but everyone downloading the file at the same time is sharing to bits and pieces to everyone else. So it was an interesting technique. Started in a very small scale, actually in Mexico, in a shoebox on top of another computer. That was the Pirate Bay in the beginning. But it grew very fast, first in Sweden, because it's the only Swedish BitTorrent tracker. Then, as the time moved on, a lot of American torrent sites was closed down. So a lot of people started using the Pirate Bay instead, and it really grew huge. So soon it was the biggest BitTorrent tracker in the world. At the same time, we started to get quite a big debate on file sharing in Sweden. But what really sparked the debate and made it like one of the top political questions was when there was a raid against the Pirate Bay, when the Pirate Bay servers was confiscated by the Swedish police. This was 2 years ago, summer, end of May. And the service was taken down. There was a huge raid, about 200 servers was confiscated where the Pirate Bay was, and also at people's homes and so on. 3 days after, there was big demonstrations in Stockholm and some other cities, where both left-wing and liberal parties and youth organizations of the parliamentary parties joined with us and the Pirate Party and to have this demonstration. And the whole question got a lot of attention, and not at least because a few days after the raid, a Swedish TV show exposed that before the raid was actually sort of ordered from the White House. The Hollywood lobby organizations had talked to the White House about they wanted something to be done to the Pirate Bay because the Pirate Bay was costing them so much money. And the White House talked to the Swedish government. They had a lot of exchange, and then the raid happened. So basically it was American interests directing Swedish police. And after this, the whole year we had there was a lot of debates because there was also election year. So a lot of the parties tried to get votes by saying that, well, of course we can't chase an entire generation of file sharers. We have to come up with a solution to stop this criminalization. And they made a lot of promises and so on. So it was a large media debate. It has more or less continued since then, up and down a bit. But it really doesn't get anywhere. The debate focuses a lot on should we have file sharing or should we not have file sharing? Is it good or bad? Sort of if it was something you could just choose. Like we didn't have it now and we could choose to get file sharing or we could choose some other path. But file sharing is more, it's a force that you have to relate to, and it's something you have to adjust the way you think relating to file sharing. You can't just decide for or against it. And this movie that we will see is sort of our reaction to this debate and those locked positions that debate was in. We thought it just asked the totally wrong questions because there was so much else going on that was much more interesting to decide than whether file sharing is good or bad. And we made this this movie relates to the Swedish Walpurgis tradition, where the last of April Swedes go out and make bonfires, burn fires everywhere and gather around them as a way of sort of melting the frozen positions of the winter and greeting spring and just trying to melt the snow away. So this was our way of melting the frozen positions of the file sharing debate. Yeah, so we can play the movie.
Walpurgisman.
Right now it's time to bring out the dance.
The lyrics will flow, yo, for the words I speak. Rap is weak, so I teach and I reach. A positive vibe, a way of life is how I'm living. So get hyped to the rhythm. KLF is the crew you hear, yeah. Design a rhyme, I just won't fear. Back to react, enough is enough. Let me ask you a question. What time is love? What time is love? What time is love? What time is love?
Stoppen, Stockholms högsta pub. Det är skymning, 4 eller 3 staplar av boken Koppemi bildar en rombformation. I mitten står jag, majgreven, iklädd gröna kläder och en ansiktsmask av fjädrar. I handen håller hon en fackla. Ja. Välkomna till Piratbyråns valborgsritual år 2007. 4 bokboll. Vi kommer idag slutligen sätta punkt för fildelningsdebatten. Samma fildelningsdebatt som vi tidigare sett till att inleda har nu tjänat sin tid. När Piratbyrån startade för 4 år sedan fanns inte den diskussionen som finns idag. Det fanns antipirater vars ord fick stå oemotsagda. Men framförallt fanns det fildelningsnätverk där det pågick en kopiering som saknar motstycke i historien. Vi såg till att lyfta fram den kopieringen i ljuset. Nu är det dags att gå vidare. Efter 2 års verksamhet samlade vi texterna från vår hemsida i en bok, CopyMe. Den här boken är det enda bestående och brännbara dokument från de år som gått. Genom att förstöra det dokumentet vill vi sopa undan de förfrusna ställningarna och ge plats för nya. Allt har sin tid och valborg tiden för att röja ut det gamla och ge plats för vårens lekar. Härmed bränner vi i 4 bokboll motsatspar som vi är färdiga med och som vi bryter sönder sig själva inifrån.
Lagligt, olagligt. Kopiering sker överallt och hela tiden. Att använda digitala data är att kopiera dem. Oavsett om det är från hårddisk till arbetsminne, från en bärbar enhet till en annan, eller från en peer till en annan peer. Oavsett om överföringens fysiska avstånd räknas i millimeter eller unit. Oavsett om kopieringen går i neurologiska banor, via kabel eller trådlöst, eller på plastbitar, chips eller genom konstellation av celler. Fortfarande föredrar vissa att tala för eller emot fildelning, som om det var ett lösryckbart fenomen. Som om alternativen inte var fler än 2. Antingen fildelningsnätverk eller filförsäljning. Ja. Igår gick vi runt med megabyte i fickorna. Idag går vi runt med gigabyte och imorgon med terabyte. I övermorgon kommer vi till en överkomlig kostnad ha små lagringsmedier som rymmer mer film och musik och text och bild än vad vi någonsin kommer att kunna tillgodogöra oss. Allt redo för omedelbar kopiering från person till person.
Privat och offentligt. Det finns inte längre ett arkiv som bara är ditt eget. Inte heller finns det arkiv som är helt öppna för alla. Vattendelningen mellan privata och offentliga nätverk, kopieringar och framträdanden gäller inte längre. Det enda som finns är nätverk genom vilka man har mer eller mindre tillgång till olika arkiv. Det finns lokaliteter och gemenskaper vi ingår i. Tekniska och sociala spärrar. Men det finns ingen fundamental skillnad på en överföring på din externa hårddisk eller en från ett fildelningsnätverk. Fildelningsnätverk har en potential för att skapa mening, gemenskap och sammanhang. En större potential än många andra kopieringstekniker. Vi vill fortsätta prata om hur den potentialen bäst förverkligas. Hur kulturcirkulation bäst kan organiseras. Hur arkivens lösgjorda energi bäst kan användas till annat än att stapla upp en mur av objekt som vi känner allt mindre för. Däremot är vi inte längre intresserade av att förklara varför fildelning är rätt. Som om det fanns ett moraliskt val mellan kopiering och icke-kopiering.
Nu tänder majgrevinnan det 3:e bålet. Gratis eller betalning? Vi eldar upp det. Gratis eller betalning? Att fråga sig om distribution av musik och film ska vara gratis eller kosta pengar är som att fråga om det ska vara gratis eller kosta pengar att gå på fest. Ibland lyckas någon ta ut tull när vi vill komma in någonstans som samlar något roligare man kan göra gratis. Men ingen skulle komma på idén att förbjuda gratis fester. När har man egentligen en fest och när har man bara lite roligt? Filerna är redan nedladdade. Filerna är redan uppladdade. De har laddats upp och ner och in och ut i överflöd. Så istället för att diskutera hur vinterns krafter ska kunna sälja is till eskimoer vill vi prata om hur vi skapar mening ur vårens överflöd.
Konst, liv och teknik. Digitala nätverken gör processer, identiteter, sammanhang och verk ogränsbart sammanlänkade. Uppdelningen mellan kreatör, verk, konsument är ett fattigt sätt att beskriva kulturell situation och digitala livsformer. Priset för att upprätthålla upphovsrättens abstrakta relation mellan konst, teknik och liv är en stum värld som kommer att bli allt mer obefolkad. Därför handlar det inte så mycket om anti-copyright, utan istället med thank you and goodbye. Let's have a fucking party!
Härmed förklarar vi fildelningsdebatten för begraven. När vi hädanefter talar om fildelning är det som ett av de otaliga sätt att kopiera. Vi talar om bättre och sämre sätt att indexera, arkivera och kopiera. Inte om huruvida kopiering är rätt eller fel. Vinterrasat ut bland våra fjällar ger plats åt våren.
Är det här vad som är kvar av koppen?
So, a great movie, really. Well, I changed to another slideshow. A question I think I asked Rasmus a year ago, is this movie a work of art, and are you the authors of this movie?
Good question. Well, this was something we did. We planned this little party in one day, and we wrote a manifesto and bought some beers and made a fire, and well, that was it. Then we also brought cameras, and afterwards, some people, so the concept was not to make a work of art, it was not even to make a video, but we also documented it, and we liked it, and we tried to spread it on the internet. And then some people thought it was a work of art, and well, then it in some sense is, but I don't find the question extremely important to find a clear answer to.
And there is a great curatorial collective from Zagreb whose name is What, How, and For Whom. Like the basic questions we all should have an answer for before we actually enter into the production of anything. In the case of Pirate Bay and Piratatbyran, what would be the simple or most straightforward answers to these questions? What, how, and for whom?
Well, if we start with for whom, when we did this movie and put it on our website, there was a lot of angry people who thought that we abandoned our ideology and had let people down because we wanted to end the file-share debate. There was also reactions claiming that you can't just end the debate by jumping over a fire. So, in a lot of ways, this movie was made for ourselves, I think, and our experience of it, and as a thing for us to relate to in our next activities.
And if we take the question for Piratbyran in general, so as a project, I think for whom is that, I mean, the motivating thing for us all the time has been for ourselves. Because we learn a lot by doing. I mean, at first we just started a website. We had no idea of continuing still working with this in 2008. But it was extremely. We learned extremely a lot from each other because we are a group with. I mean, some people come from a hacker perspective, some from a more political or philosophical or practical or musical perspective. So we learn from each other by all the time discussing and analyzing the developments in this field. So for whom is primarily for ourselves, but how is through all the time interacting with others and creating feedback loops and
what part?
The what part?
Yeah.
What we are doing?
Yeah.
Yes, we are trying to. I mean, today I would not say that we try to mobilize for free culture or so, because the mobilization is happening anyway. It's very clear that the conflicts around digital copying will grow in importance, and people will be angry, and people will engage in different battles for bigger freedoms on the net or whatever. So it's not that our task is to mobilize thousands of people for a social revolution, really, because the mobilization happens by itself. But what we try to do is more to avoid the dead ends and instead more asking other questions than giving answers. So it's always very clear that many people want to. It's very natural. Many people want to find easy solutions to these conflicts. For example, but can't we find a system of just compensating the authors? If some people pay a little money for internet, then the money can go to the authors and everyone can be happy. And that would maybe be nice, but it would clearly not work, because it's still the questions, who are the authors? Who should be compensated? How should cultural production at best be organized? These questions, which are in the end very political, which we try to not let the discussion end, but instead leave the dumb questions behind and put more interesting questions.
I think in a way that the who and the what are sort of total opposites. That for whom it is for the absolute, first and foremost for the absolute core of Piratbyran, the small circle, and then the further out you get, the less it is for these people. So we don't speak for anyone else. We speak from a sort of a core and then outwards. But as far as what, really not much is happening here in the core, because we don't have any propositions that we try to propose or formulate any program, or as you say, don't mobilize from there. Rather that the things happening are more in the edges or in the periphery. That more that people are inspired by us, and from them to formulate something or try to do something rather than we do it ourselves. It's actually a problem for us sometimes that people have great ideas and they like go to our webpage and say, look, I have this great idea, why don't you do this? But the thing we always try to promote is for them to do it themselves instead, and we can help them and we can assist them, but there's no point in Piratbyran being like a party that's supposed to front like some sort of movement. And I mean the problem is the same with the Pirate Bay, that there's no point in the Pirate Bay doing anything or being the front of file sharing. It's actually very dangerous. So the more it spreads out, the better it is.
But we should all agree that Pirate Bay is at the front of the file sharing. I guess we all in this room could agree that it's the ultimate, the best quality service for file sharing we ever had. So if we view Pirate Bay just as the service and apply those questions to Pirate Bay only as some sort of practical outcome of your theoretical or activistic work, then who Pirate Bay serves for, and it also generates some amount of money. There is a financial, material sort of consequence of running Pirate Bay. So if we apply these questions like what is Pirate Bay doing, for whom and how, what the answers would be?
The what question for Pirate Bay is maybe divided into several parts, but one is, of course, basically indexing files. Indexing files which are on the private computers of millions of people, but just creating an index so that these files so people can find files on other people's computers. And the other part would be the other part of what is explaining to people what they are doing, like that, like how internet works, how file sharing works, and today, of course, Pirate Bay and Piratbyran are different groups. We work in quite different ways, but it's also certain overlapping, so we work very close together. It's not really that Pirate Bay is only practical, we are only theoretical, but of course, yes, there's such a tendency. So, the other questions about Pirate Bay, you mean who? And for whom?
For whom, yeah.
I don't think that the Pirate Bay has a clear group of people to which they are directed. It's more like that. I mean, it started really from a hacker perspective. Like, here we have a technical possibility. Let's try to use it and see what happens. And I mean, then I think the point with running a big open index for file sharing is that we should really try to push the possibilities of globalizing file sharing networks as far as we can, because of course it will provoke resistance. Of course some people will say that, oh, if it weren't for Pirate Bay, then the anti-pirates would not be so aggressive. But I think that's in line with the hacker attitude, that we should try out the technical possibilities now and try to debate them, so that we don't have to do it like in 10 years, because that will be much harder, and then the risk of very extreme repressive measures would be higher, I think.
You mentioned the word global, and we should all agree that Pirate Bay is the biggest, the best global service for file sharing. What about the Piratbyran? Do you view Piratbyran as a Swedish organization?
Yeah, it is a hard question.
Sorry.
I mean, in a way, I think it would be very bad for an organization like Piratbyran to try to be global and try to speak for everyone. First of all, it's much easier to start from a certain location, and I think it's more valuable to have this special location-based experiences, and then come to places like this and share them and compare them, instead of everyone trying to act on the same level. Not only will it be reducing a lot of different situations into one, but also it's good to have like tensions between different groups that work in different ways and different experiences. So.
I mean, in practice, I think Piratbyran is quite much a Scandinavian project, because we're working quite close together with our friends in Denmark and Norway, and so it's very much Scandinavian. Then in many projects we also get European, working with people like in Germany or Serbia or whatever. So, but I don't think we try to work in a global way. Work like with discourse on a global way. It would be hard, I think.
Yeah, also because I mean, if you don't try to pinpoint us as a Swedish or Scandinavian, but we are at a specific location that relates to a certain mass media situation, a certain broadband situation, our backgrounds, the sort of material structures and networks that we work in, and then you can ask how those can be generalized to other places, or if they're specific for Sweden or Scandinavia. That's another question. I also would like to add that I think there's also the danger of seeing the Pirate Bay like some sort of practical continuation of our theory and so on. Because, I mean, a lot of the things we talk about is not just how to spread the files as much as possible, or how to make people download as much as possible, but also, more importantly, how can you create meaning from all these materials that are accessible? How can you make some good use of it? And I mean, Pirate Bay just sets like a minimum standard there, that at least everyone would be able to share everything with each other. But then, what happens after that? Pirate Bay can't answer that question. So.
Coming to questions, you said that the movie we saw just ended the copyright debate. Then, of course, there was a correction. Correction says that the debate is going on, but not based on stupid, obvious questions. And we are not going to take part in. I will try to quote a bit a part of the text, which says that in the world of millions of options, we are going to quarrel about the two. What would be the real questions in post-debate?
I think the turn we made around the time of this performance was quite much a performative turn, one could say, and it has very much to do with the general problem of abundance, of having just too much information, having more files on your hard drive, more music than you can ever listen to, more films than you have time to see. I mean, then the problem cannot be, then there's no meaning in discussing in all eternity how to get more files. But the interesting thing must be, how do we do something meaningful with all these files? Because it's nothing that says that file sharing will bring freedom to the world. The copying of files could also turn into a very sterile, very boring activity when we just shuffle around the music and not feel much about it, like listening to music in a supermarket or whatever. The interesting thing is that there are interesting counter tendencies which have not to do with copying files, but with how to create meaning, how to use it. And, well, it's very clear. For example, if we talk about music, that at the same time as people have been copying many more files and buying less CDs, people are instead putting money on live music. People go to concerts, go to festivals, pay much more for live music than before. And that's probably because live music is not eternal. You can't have you can't go to eternal number of concerts. You can have an eternal number of files, more or less, on your hard disk. But this is something which is limited, and with something where you actually create meaning and meet people and create a context around those files. So, that's what's much more interesting to discuss then. then like should it be free or should it be for a price?
Yeah, none of us here is into economy, and we are definitely not into research of business model. This is something we would rather leave to some other people. But what you said just now is the basis of some proposition you had developing of establishing as a replacement for traditional and in heavy decline, vanishing surplus value extracted out of market value of this documentation entertainment industry was selling. You proposed the notion of performative value. Yeah. Can you elaborate on that a bit?
I mean, it's quite clear that it is not possible to build a working economy on selling artifacts which are digital if they can be copied. Not in the long run. And I mean, what is possible is to build an economy around performative stuff, and that's very basic, of course. I mean, look at the computer game industry. They're not selling the games anymore. They are selling the entrance to the online worlds instead. So it's a shift from objects to the real-time experiences. But as you said, I mean, the interesting thing to us is maybe not really business models, but the question of value. And I mean, it shouldn't be that strange thing to talk about culture as primarily something performative using the objects for producing value out of them. But somehow what happened in the late 20th century was a shift in discourse, especially on a political level, of course, where there was a lot of talk about the creative industries will be what saves the economy after industrial times and so on, and then the creativity and culture suddenly became defined as only objects. So I mean, it's not that we will create a new world. It's basically we want to get rid of this very strange, quite short-lived idea. So get on the right track again and start doing stuff instead of just fighting over files.
There is another shift to say in digitalizing the so-called content, and these what we used to call copy. I don't think it's a good name anymore, because copy used to be a copy in analog world, and in digital world it's a clone actually. So analog copies used to have some sort of life cycle. So it degrades over time. Movies are disappearing. Paper on which the text are printed is vanishing slowly. So it, in a way, resembled what used to be the original, which also had some sort of life cycle. But now, in the world of clones, which are staying permanently frozen, is there any substantial change in the concept of having the eternal sort of frozen image of something which is not going to die or get old?
I think, I mean, no human culture can live with like remembering everything. I mean, it's like Nietzsche or whatever. Forgetfulness is a very, very basic and important concept. But forgetfulness works in different ways in the analog and the digital. And I think yesterday we sat and looked for some old documentation from one of our demonstrations, and we couldn't find the picture. Photo, yes, photos from Stockholm 2 years ago. They were everywhere on the net, but now it seems like all the servers were down again. And so I mean, there are a forgetfulness in digital networks, but the forgetfulness is not in the material itself. It is in the distribution. I have the same experience myself. My hard drive with music broke down, so I had no music anymore. And then I just went out to the Pirate Bay and looked up the same torrents I had been downloading, because I mean much of the music was from there. So many of the files I had lost from my hard drive I could just get immediately again, but some of them I could not. And who decided that? That wasn't one person. It wasn't the material of the media, but it was the swarm of peers. Like if not there was a continuity of people having interest in the music, it would go away. But if there was a continuous interest in it, it's saved. So it's a totally different way of upholding memory, which of course remains to be analyzed somehow.
You both mentioned in the previous answer another magic word, network. And here we are in Novi Sad, networking more or less. Why we are doing this networking? I mean, nobody actually pays for that. Nobody from some external points is ordering us to do so. Nobody's even proposing us to network ourselves. So it's a sort of a personal question to Magnus and Rasmus. Why are you doing what you're doing within Piratbyran? Why are you here in Belgrade? It's the same question like why I was in Stockholm talking to you, why Vladan went to Germany to network with another organizations. What is this incentive, this drive, and where it's coming from?
I think, once again, first and foremost, if it wasn't something that was primarily for yourself, you wouldn't be able to stand it. But also, I think it's, if you want to ask for the use of it, I also think that it's good to have like a sort of a self-referential circulation of talks and projects and everything, that maybe that they themselves may not change the world in any way, but I mean in a way I think Piratbyran sort of, even if we're a small group and what we do is mostly driven by our own interests, there's always a lot of people like being drawn into this, and maybe those people are usually in a more in a position with more power than us to change things, more of insiders in politics or the music business or whatever. So I mean, our experiences here will of course change the way we think in different ways and change the way we write and talk, and we'll eventually find its way to something.
I think curiosity is very basic concept. And that's true both for the people networking digitally on Pirate Bay and for us, like networking discursively here. So I mean, why do people build self-organized or like more or less self-organized networks with the help of a BitTorrent tracker sharing different files? Yes, because they're curious or something. They heard from some friend that a band did an album, they download it, listen to it once and delete it again. But before they delete it, they have sent it further to two different people. And that's building a network. It's by curiosity. And that's, I mean, what makes us doing this is also curiosity, because it's it's really an interesting way to learn about the nature of culture, of digital networks, of media, of conditions for all this, and the human drives behind. You really can learn about this by thinking through the questions that file sharing can help putting.
Yes, this is somehow I want to say how we started to think about what you are doing, and to introduce what we had also at Creative Commons Salon. We did some kind of feedback loop of production that people publish under the free license, and somehow I see this like a way of building a new content, of building something free that people can use and share. I brought Rereader, the publication we published in 2006, and in fact 2007 when we met. We just read what you did, and Vlidi made interview, and I said, yeah, this is a question we want to discuss. In fact, how to build a new context, how to build a new surrounding for this sharing content that we have. And we met in Berlin, and then you say, oh, it's interesting how you put it, how you collage it inside of the publication. And it was very nice situation somehow. We fragmented various material inside of the reader, and somehow a lot of people reacted. And I think this is very important things, how we are curating, how we are connecting different and various material, because I think it's a huge problem what you are also telling about, that how there is a hyper-production of all kind of material, all kind of files, videos, and indexing and making this visible somehow. It's not still appropriate inside of the internet. Somehow I see also Creative Commons like a possibility to connect different practitioners, as well, like free software and GPL license connected Linux users. This was the answer on this question, how to continue. I mean, this is the important things. Also for the local production, what we are trying to present 2 days before in the Cultural Center Rex, when we have a sort of exhibition. It was video and printed publications as well, presented like inside of the Freedom Toaster. Maybe Vlidi, you can say a little about Freedom Toaster later, because it's a very interesting concept. Also, I want to say that it was we chose to present those publications, and it was like from the Museum of the Contemporary Art here from Novi Sad, the book of Miško Šulaković, about conceptual art, because he licensed it under the Creative Commons license, until to the Fear Belgrade documentation and other activist magazines. Also, I brought the newest magazine, Kontrapunkt. You can find it there. They also publish it under the Creative Commons license, but it doesn't matter. It is just it was just a free content always at their Kontrapunkt info internet site. And all those various of publications and material was for me making some new context, a new identity, how those free materials and sharing of you say so-called content. But in that moment, it maybe became a content. You know what I want to say. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, while in this talks about content, and if we go just one step further, it's pretty clear that most of the businesses as well are repositioning themselves. And if you look at the biggest content providers, who used to be content providers, it's pretty clear that it's not the ownership over content which matters anymore. Nobody is counting anymore. And if we get into the account what you said, even today we are faced with much more of the so-called content than we could ever consume. So what gains importance, and where the decisions are being actually important, the decisions are being brought, it's not as we used to think traditionally about who owns the content, but who curates the interface of these archives. What is going to appear in top 10 searches, and what is going to stay forever buried somehow at the bottom of the results. And that was something what Vladan also spoke about, this hyper production of content and this craze of networking of the content. So can you elaborate a bit on this curating the archives position? This is, I guess, one of the most important questions which are coming in this post-copyright debate about how we search better, how we find more precise, how we contextualize the content in the most effective way.
And I think one concept of content and archives that's kind of problematic in this sense is this idea of access to knowledge, that what technology can bring is for everyone to have access to the same knowledge, like it was some objective archive of tools and information that you could access, like the history of art, for example. Everyone can have access to that. And I think that's not important, because that's just a huge archive of too much information. And also maybe not selection of what you present as the narrative of art or something like that. But also I think that the content or the archive has to relate to the performative aspect as well. For example, instead of like accessing an external archive, one thing that we did this weekend that I think is very important was we visited this Kulturhistorische Mausoleum in Belgrade, like a exhibition of art copies in a cellar in Belgrade, and I think this is the best way of sort of curating archives, that you not the actual mausoleum itself, but to start from a very local point. I mean, we was there, we spent time there, we were freezing in the cellar, we were talking, and that in its turn, a very small archive, but that led to discussions about exchanging links, researching other things, finding links leading from this to other history of the Balkans and of Europe and of museums and so on. So I think that's the way to relate the performative and the archives, is to, from the performative, create the context around it and sort of more enter the archives like an archaeologist looking for traces, rather than sort of presenting the archives straight up.
What about contemporary, if you are archaeologist?
Archaeologists, well,
like physical space, no office or so. It's very much. We are in different Swedish cities, and if we look at, how it all started was on the internet, of course. We were on IRC chatting, and a loose group of people with different backgrounds chatting online and playing internet radio for each other. A small pirate internet radio station. So that was the combination of protocols, like internet radio and chat IRC, that started it all. And the whole time, our way of organization has been IRC. So we have a chat channel going on all the time. We don't talk there all the time, of course, but it's a low-level ongoing conversation without a physical place. And then sometimes, of course, we arrange events like parties or in performances, in demonstrations, whatever. But basically, it's just ongoing in virtual chat rooms. And we also have avoided to have to take too much formal decisions. So we also avoided to have a. We don't really have a budget, or we avoid to spend money because when you have to spend money, when you start having money, then you have to take decisions about how to spend the money, and in order to take decisions, you have to have a structure, and in order to have a structure, you get bored, and so money is boring. So we don't really need to fund very much things. Sometimes we have sold T-shirts online. It's made some money, and as soon as we had money, we tried to spend it all quite fast because yeah. Well, but when we have money, we spend it all because it's
foundation or
printing books and burning them or whatever. It's dangerous to just sit on money.
Another question about the organization itself. If you ever been in the position that not everybody were agreeing on something, how you bring decisions? You vote or you talk?
Well, it's never really happened because usually because it's based on IRC and so on, it's pretty much real time. When something discussed is decided by the people who are there at the time, and if someone online there, it's they really can't say anything about it. And also that the one who happened to read the mail and answer the mail gets the job and leads that project that happened to come out of that. So at the very center of Piratbyran, there's just a big void of nothingness. And most of the things we do, we don't create anything ourselves, but most of it is members of Piratbyran entering into different projects, whether it's talking to a political institution or going into an art project or something, and then just mutating that in a way. So I think actually there was an interview in this Reader with, I think it was with you, the Slobodna Kultura interview, where if it was you that said how are decisions made in Slobodna Kultura, and if I remember correctly, it was something like someone comes with a proposal to do something and it gets network support or not. So either that person does it themselves or the whole organization does it.
Yeah, exactly. That's how it works, because we always have. We are quite a few people, and no one of us can work on this full time. So we depend on enthusiasm for projects to be made. So we have much more ideas for projects than we have time to do them. So only the type of projects which people agree on will be made, basically.
How do you define membership in Piratbyran?
We don't really have membership. Well, we have an inside and an outside in some way, as we have a core of people continuously working with it. But then when we do specific projects, then it always expands networks to larger temporary communities. And then there is another level of membership, might be membership on the web forum, which was
65,000 people or something, but it's not used
How
that
many?
much anymore. 65,000 people in Sweden registered on our web forum.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
That's of course
That's
quite much, but we don't. I mean, forum communication is not. It's quite much. It had its peak a couple of years ago. I think today people communicate in other ways much. But I mean, yeah. So, but we are not a membership-based organization. It's not an organization you join. Basically, it's you just happen to be there, maybe.
Another something connected with current development. Pirate Bay is under legal threat again. Then it's really weird. And as you said 2 days ago on the panel in Belgrade, it's really weird because what Pirate Bay is doing is not providing any really infrastructure or it's not storing any content to be shared. It's just sharing metadata about where this content is. Then again, you have these huge systems like RapidShare, which is actually storing and distributing huge volumes of content, but is not really indexing in public. So why Pirate Bay is in court now?
Well, I think it's very clear that...
And not RapidShare.
Because how copyright is used today by film industry and record industry, it's not so much that they to every price will prohibit people from getting their content. I think they will it's much more about control. They will try to keep some level of control over what people likes. Because if you go to RapidShare, for example, then you already got this link from some friend, probably. So you already know what you want. And it's not changed by the use of RapidShare. You get the content, but you don't, it's not really changing your behavior much. But the behavior of using file sharing networks is something else, because you go there and then you just randomly search for data, and it's even more in those old school file sharing protocols like SoulSeek. You can go into people's folders, finding stuff you didn't knew you wanted. So that makes stuff with your taste. You might look up more underground material or more obscure stuff, and it develops your taste in unforeseeable directions, and that's more dangerous for example, large record company than that people just copy their files. They prefer that people copy their files before that people copy some other files.
So is this some sort of genuine politics of metadata emerging?
Yeah, I think so, and especially the more the film and the music industry adapt to file sharing, the more important this control of attention gets. Because, an artist is now such an enterprise, or a movie is such an enterprise, that it must be coordinated with that people see the movie when it's showing in the theater and that not later, and also that all companies that sponsor them, they want the public's attention to their products when the movie is released, because they coordinate that with the release of some kind of product that they're launching in the movie and so on. So it's very much based on all these enterprises working together and like pumping up attention at that very moment. So it's also performative in a way.
And it maybe shows that the ownership over this so-called content is losing on importance, but the access, the interface, the top 10 list of the content is actually a place where politics will be led.
And controlling, like synchronizing people's desires. I mean,
programming maybe.
Yeah, of course. It's a bit more conspirational programming people.
It's just psychoanalysis.
Yes. Yeah. But for sure, I think that film companies very well know that they can make money even if lots of people pirated movies. But what threats them is if people doesn't really care about them. So what they want is really, and there's a tendency, for example, in Hollywood blockbuster film production that, 20 years ago they produced a film and then it was for several months on the cinema and people paid for several months and then they got the money back for the film. Today it's much more just-in-time production, funnily enough. So they produce a film for millions of dollars and they expect to get the money back in 5 days. So then they have to concentrate enormous amount of interest, and they really have to have 1 day when it is released. So if it's out before release, because someone in the film industry is leaking it out, then they are very scared. So, it's also interesting because if we look at the torrents of the Pirate Bay, the film torrents, 90% of the films they wouldn't sue anyone for or care about. What they care about is only the very new, very highly expensive and highly marketed films. But to them, they of course they don't care that there's also underground material. For them, Pirate Bay is only a way to distribute blockbuster movies.
And it's getting to be, especially I think movies is really in the forefront of this because they're so expensive to produce that it involves so much more than just people paying for tickets, and not only product placement, but also if a movie is made in south of Sweden now, I did some work on the music film studios in south of Sweden. They really got a lot of money from the regional council because they will increase tourism with so and so many percent because they will show this many beautiful meadows from south of Sweden, and Germans will come there and so on. So it's really an entire enterprise involving the entire economy of that region. And if what they want is for some German to see people running around a Swedish meadow in the summer using iPhones, the very day the iPhone is released in Germany or something. But if someone watches that when it's winter in Sweden and the iPhone has been released 2 years ago, that whole value is totally useless. So it's really based on not just the culture economy, but the whole economy.
It has a lot to do with the current theories and practice of cultural industries, cultural tourism, of course, content economy, attention economy. Now a question for each of us, which relies on the things you wrote about, that this Blairean strategy that once all the factories move to China, white people of Europe will just produce content for whom exactly and charge it. What do you think? Because look at this panel, for example, Vladan and Rasmus and Magnus and me, and I don't know much of the people who are actually involved in current production of physical objects. So it must be somehow true that this thing is shifting towards what different theories or businesses called attention economy, open source capitalism, content-oriented economy. What kind of Europe is, Western world is emerging as the consequence of this?
Well, what kind of Western world we will get is not the consequence of it. This is the consequence of the fucking oil catastrophe.
Really, this was completely unexpected answer.
Are we all going to sit and look at the computers in 30 years' time and nobody will produce anything, and fresh goods are going to be imported from Asia, which is going to consume in return whatever we do with our computers, or what?
Yeah, but I think it's a very huge question how the media and how the news are distributed. For example, we had now a consequence what happened when those movie about violence in Belgrade during the demonstration on the YouTube gets much more attention than the news, in fact. In 24
Kosovo
hours.
for sneakers one.
Yes, Kosovo for sneakers, and the other one, Kosovo for I don't know what
computers.
For computers, yes. And this is also a question for me because, especially in Serbia, the media and the newspaper as in general, the whole world that is producing some kind of news, are completely incompetent anymore, and we have to build. The media activists here, in fact, have a huge space of producing valid news, and I think this is a possibility for all of us here to produce valid news and to distribute those valid news somehow, in a sense that can really explain what is going on in the local.
How we validate those news? How we make them valid?
Yeah, this is somehow the very problematic question, because the other news are valid because they are installed from some corporations or some powerful positions that are valid in news. And I think all personal news, like personal blogs, like individual approaches to that what is surrounding you, are in fact more valid than any corporate news. And this is also your approach from the Piratbyran, that what is personal and what is performative is in fact a value of everyday life, in the sense that that unmediated activity and unmediated performative expression can be in fact some kind of new content, in the sense of how the things can be distributed.
Yeah, and you spoke a
lot
lot.
How I and what I think it's very important for all local contexts. There can be so much, like a network of them. It's how to make this what we say, like curating of and indexing of them. And this is what in fact Pirate Bay made, like just indexing things, making things accessible for the people. I think I think the problematic things in the beginning, before 5 years, for example, I will take again the Kontrapunkt at kontrapunkt.info, like the most like one example, because they were producing news and producing discussion. They had very vivid forum before 3 or 4 years. Now this forum is not interesting anymore somehow. You said also that forums are not interesting anymore. I don't know why, but maybe you have more experience on that point. And Kontrapunkt was really trying to produce news and trying to produce a different reality. But Kontrapunkt was somehow trying to imitate other corporative portals or news production. For example, I can say freely some P92 internet site or some other internet site. It's not exactly like that, but I want to say without a real... I think that many of personals, media products and individual production of content and news can be curated on a very different way and archived, so that we have really a picture that is that can be readable without this powerful or power or corporative identity. It's interesting that Kontrapunkt, after 5 years of media or an internet activity, published now this magazine that I brought. It came out from the printing day before yesterday or something, and they gave it to me for Novi Sad to bring here. Yeah, this is how I look on this activity or media activism on the internet.
And another question for you and for Slobodna Kultura and for me, but you may answer why we do all this networking and activistic sort of approach. Why we spend all the time we have on talking to people of Novi Sad, for example?
For me, it's a question of changing my reality. I mean, changing the quality of my everyday life. It's my personal. I'm always coming from my personal position. Yeah, I want to have nice time with other people that can upgrade my ideas how the world is. I mean, or how they can move me or of rethinking and making a better quality of our life. And I think there are a lot of critique on Creative Commons. Like Creative Commons is only because Creative Commons are coming and saying, yeah, the author exists somehow, and this is just a modification. And in fact, this is just an extension of classical copyright. I mean, nothing else. But somehow Creative Commons can be readable completely different in different local surroundings. For example, here in Serbia, has completely other perspective as for example in Sweden or in India, because I met also people from India. It's completely different political context where the Creative Commons is displayed. Or even in Nigeria, where Creative Commons or intellectual property does not exist at all. I mean, people just producing their own movies and they are selling this on the market. It's completely free from the button. You don't have the concept of intellectual property. But I brought also one product what we made in the past few weeks. This is a CC Beat, the first compilation on Serbian. It's from Serbian bands. I will explain in Serbian what is this. Ovo je prva kompilacija bendova koji su izdali svoje pesme pod Creative Commons licencama i ostavit ću ovde 3 diska od CK13, pa ja se nadam da ćemo poslati još iz Beograda, pa ljudi mogu da iskopiraju ili da uzmu. Također sam doneo i readere o kojima smo pričali, oni su pozadi, oni su isto besplatni, možete da uzmete. Ovi ovde zeleni i Kontrapunkt magazin košta 150 dinara. To je samo da navedem.
Okay. As we approach the end, one last question for our guests, and then maybe some questions from you. And the question is, we all right now network like mad, talk about things with different people, travel around, exchange symbolically or genuinely some sort of content in the forms of publications, emails, media. What do you think you will do 10 years from now? Will you still travel around and talking to people, or things will change? You have some other plans. Things may develop other way, or you will attend to production of something else?
Well, personally, that's a good question. Personally, I think I'm quite sure that this ongoing project, which always mutates, will somehow go on into something, but it will certainly not be like discussing the same things, but somehow related, I would guess. And
do you think that the discussion is a kind of product which will never be in a sort of inflation? Or?
I mean, I'm not really thinking in terms of discussion as like the battle of ideas or something. It's more like basically finding meaningful ways to spend time, which is not only like working to survive, and finding lines of flight from that, basically. So this is one.
Yeah, well, I agree as well. I mean, I think it will somehow go on in a mutated form together or in other constellations. And I mean, either it's going to go that you engage more and more in it and try to change more and maybe like try to reach some sort of place where you can have an influence, or it's retreating to realize that you have to flatten it, as you talked about Serbia being flatten it and like starting from a totally different point. I don't know.
I mean, it's hard even to know what we are doing later this year. In fact, because I mean, we are not planning much longer than until this summer, when we have a very exciting project. We will drive a bus through Europe to Italy and take part in an art biennale, and we'll make a new kind of statement. And we don't even know what kind of statement it will be. It will be improvised in the bus. So, I mean, probably we will try to post-produce that experience and take in all kinds of reactions we get from other people, and that will influence us. I mean, we are not a group who wants to tell the world something. We are more a continuous exchange, which also changes how we perceive our own meaning.
And also, we must be aware that this bus trip, where we're supposed to produce a manifest, can also be the very thing that splits us all together. It's the first time we're in a tight space and have to actually have a pressure to produce something that everyone will more or less agree on. So limited physical space, both in the bus and on paper, might destroy us.
It's a great timing, so we do pass through Novi Sad, park, pass on the Exit Festival and perform a split here.
Could be, yeah.
Would be fantastic. I mean, last year's Exit Festival, I was there. It was basically also a moment in the history of Piratbyran in some way.
Thanks so much. This was Piratbyran, Rasmus and Magnus, and Vladan and me as some sort of hosts, as well as Kuda, Branka, and CK13. Any questions, or we just play some music or movies? Oh, there's a question.
This is not quite a question. It's merely my own opinion. It's not exactly an opinion. I had a doubt about it. I had a doubt: is there exists such a thing as intellectual property? Because someone can own a book, but someone cannot own a poem. I mean, I don't know if it's clear metaphor, but to me it's perfectly clear. You cannot own a poem. Poem is a thing of whole universe. It's not personal, private thing. When you write a poem, it goes beyond you, beyond your boundaries. It goes beyond your mind. It is not your property, but book is your property, and it is a physical thing. And I absolutely support you in your activities, because you said that as much as people download albums, they're much more are going to live concerts, and because there is the place when they can receive a unique experience. And as I don't know the name of the guy who went in.
Vlidi.
Okay. he said that analog things have a life cycle, but digital things do not have a life cycle. Recently, I had an exhibition of digital photography, and they suggested me to limit a number of copies. And I didn't want to do that because digital photography has not its life cycle. It's not a copy, it's a clone, as you said. And it has a sense in analog photography because film has its life cycle. But only thing which is unique and original in the digital world is data. And it's abstract thing, it's not material thing. Data is abstract. Only storage of data.
I don't think data could be considered as the abstract thing. I think data are very material. Electrons are not nothing. Electrons live on the physical networks, on a hard disk. Somebody is producing the cables, maintaining servers, working hard.
Okay, no, I didn't mean the data, the storage of data. Is that what you're talking about? I mean the information is not a material thing. Information is absolutely abstract. You cannot own a mathematical or physical formula. You cannot own that. You can own a product which is based on some formula and concrete object, but you cannot own a formula.
I think this is a great reflection. I think it's very important, this attitude of just saying, I don't believe that there can exist intellectual property.
Yeah.
Because it's a difference between, we try also to get to that. To express and perform this, like, we don't believe in it. Instead of saying, like, we are against it, we are we are not anti-copyright. We are more like, how the fuck would that work? We don't believe that would work. And it's also very true that, like, copyright, it has a specific history. It's connected to, like, Western Europe, Christianity, Enlightenment, that specific philosophy. If you go to, like, China, it's very hard to explain to people how the general concept of owning IDs could work. Because it's very culturally specific. So let's just don't believe in it instead of like fighting it against it for a long time. I hope.
I mean, there are several paradoxes here. For once, I mean, if you have like your example, a poem only for yourself, it's intellectual property is totally unnecessary because no one knows you have it, no one can take it in any way. And the moment you give it out or share it in any way, intellectual property becomes impossible. And it's also impossible exactly because information is abstract, but on the other hand, information has never existed outside material preconditions. And these material preconditions are, of course, very important, where information exists, how it is stored, how it's transferred, and so on.
I just want to say exactly that. It's not a matter of right or wrong. It's a matter of possibility and impossibility. It is not possible to own the action.
Well, I'd like to ask, you talked about the fight between the digital that we have stored and the live performances that are, I don't know, that are the bands play. But let's talk about the cinemas and the movie studios you talked about. Shall we return to the theater? So, do you have some idea what shall we go for? What shall we go after the, let's say, fall of?
Yes, I think this is one of the most tricky things with trying to discuss. Like after copyright, because there is this idea that copyright was the thing that works for like text and films and music, and it all could work in the same way. And then after copyright, we should also have one big model working for everything. I don't think it can be that way, because music and film, for example, are very different kinds of cultural expressions. Music is an ancient way of expressing for people. Film is a much more specific thing. It's like 100 years old, only, almost. So, of course, it's harder to say how, like, the production of a big, expensive film could take place in this time. But also, it must be a question: do we need to produce lots of multi-million films every year in this century as well? I'm not really sure, because now there are lots of other, maybe more interesting art forms, like short films or computer games or whatever. So in terms of cinema, I'm more interested in, not really in how can we produce more films like more expensive films, but more like how can we use all those thousands and thousands of films which already are there. Because going to cinema today is a quite boring experience. I think it's much more interesting than how people can start different kinds of, like, small-scale settings, start their own pirate cinemas, for example. This size, I think it's this is a very nice place for a pirate cinema.
This is pirate.
Yes, I guess so. So I mean, that is a much more interesting thing than to, like, I mean, how we create the context around the films, how we, like, select films we like and talk about them afterwards, instead of just being pushed out to a parking lot like you'd be in a mainstream cinema. So I think that's the interesting question. Then, of course, for people who are already in the film industry, it might be a hard transformation, but yeah.
I have a question. It's let's go to torrent strikers back. So, like, what's the legal problem with them? Because they store only metadata. So, like, what's the legal issue? Like, they don't store, like, the movie. They store only, like, who has the movie. Yeah.
Well, I suppose when it comes to the prosecution against the Pirate Bay, it's really like a circular argument that, on the one hand, they're trying to imply that they make a whole lot of money on other people's work and on copyright infringement. So that's one of their case, that they make a lot of money, and that makes them even worse. On the other hand, they don't charge for copyright infringement, but aiding copyright infringement, helping other people to commit copyright infringement. This is a totally new crime in Sweden that's been invented by the prosecutor. I mean, if Pirate Bay would be convicted, this would be like the normal case that you can't link to other materials, the whole internet would fall apart. I mean, so on the one hand, I think this is the tricky situation for the Swedish authorities, that on the one hand, they can't convict the Pirate Bay in that sense, because it would be impossible to make this a generalized case. And on the other hand, they can't let Pirate Bay go, because there's so much international pressure on the Pirate Bay, on the Swedish authorities to do something about Pirate Bay, and they just don't believe that they just can't let these kind of criminals go free, so to speak. So it's a very tricky situation for them.
I think we have to understand that what copyright is, or how copyright is in practice, has changed a lot since the 20th century, because at that time copyright was about regulating, can you copy that or can you not copy that? It was about the copyrighted material. Today copyright is more used as a way to regulate possibilities. It's against tools rather than files. It's not so much may you copy that file or not. It's more like, is this network good or bad? Is this tool legal or illegal? So it's getting more and more abstract. It's going very far away from what copyright was in the beginning. In fact, it's really much more about general control, and it gets more and more political, and it gets more and more about, like, basic things like freedom of speech, I would say. In the end, it very much comes down to that.
And what happened to this idea of buying the island of
Yes. Yes. Interesting question. Yes, the Pirate Bay wanted to buy an own island. They tried to raise money to buy Sealand, this strange oil platform outside, Micronation. It wasn't for sale for a reasonable price. This money is still there, and the Pirate Bay will buy an island somewhere. It basically would be like an island with forest, like a way to save some forests to prevent some global warming, and there will be an island which is bought by the Pirate Bay. I hope quite soon.
Yeah, and you'll put are there going to be servers on this island, and it's going to
negotiate.
Be used is it going to be how to say a state of its own?
Let's
no copyright.
Let's see what can happen after this summer. Maybe this bus we drive to Italy. Maybe we define that as an island and declare that as a free zone or something. I don't know. Maybe, but I mean, as for now, the Pirate Bay's servers are spread in a very distributed way. So not even the operators of the Pirate Bay know where all the servers are. So if the servers are shut down on one place, they will come up again at some other place which not even they know. So even the Swedish prosecutor has said that he knows that Pirate Bay cannot be stopped. They just want to show an example.
In Sweden there is something called Pirate Party. Can you tell us a little bit about it? Is it a real political party? How your work relates to that organization, and do you see them as your partner in developing this file sharing debate?
Good question. Well, it was quite funny because it was the 1st of January 2006. And we just sat on the internet as usual and suddenly read something that someone started a pirate party. We didn't know who that could be because we didn't know these people. We saw some names of people which we have never met, and but at the same time they used a language which was quite close to what we used to say and so on. So it was interesting, and they got lots of interest. So. And they are a political party, and they are an activist organization, also open to members. So there are very different structure from us. We are more of a close, informal group, and they accept members and have local groups in lots of cities and try to do some activism and so. So I mean, in many ways we have we talk about similar stuff and have similar ideas, and in other ways we are working in very different ways. But of course we have contact with them and so now, but we don't have any formal connection at all.
I think it's quite telling that, I mean, the website wasn't much really. It was just the fact that they call us as a party. But that was seen like a step, like first there's this grassroots activism, then comes the party and changes everything. I mean, just a couple of days after this website was put up, BBC was there interviewing them and so on. So that really says a lot about how this whole idea of the party and that political way is very well established. And that also speaks against the Pirate Party, I think, because the whole political parliamentary system is so rigid. So even if they would get enough votes to be members of the parliament, they would just be outplayed by the other parties and so on. So it's now they're trying to get into the European Union. The election is next year, right? Yeah. 2009. And they're trying to get someone into European Parliament. But I mean, I think this is the wrong way of working. I think it's better to try to mutate the system and intervene in the system rather than trying to play by those rules. So I mean, I think that they could do a lot of things with the European Union, like having people there doing a lot of boring work, reading proposals, and things like an organization like Piratbyran can never do because we don't have the time. But they have all these people that can do sort of manual work, so to speak.
Just to add, by some weird numbers game, looks like Pirate Party of Sweden will enter European Parliament with at least one representative in 2009. And the numbers game is the title of the interview with Richard Falking, the president of the Pirate Party, Slobodna Kultura, did some months ago. You can find in this green book on the table, and it's free for you to take and read. So much more details about Pirate Party, I think you could find there.
And the book also contains the manifest that we are reading here in a more readable form.
Thank you all for coming, and thank you so much, Magnus and Rasmus, for coming also. This was a discussion presentation about Piratbyran and, well, whatever world is related around the word of pirate. Thank you all for coming once again, and see you soon with some other guests.